Hello, Cinemaster lovers. Welcome back. I hope you're ready for an exciting experience because we've got something special for you today. Get comfortable, grab your snacks, and let's dive right into the action. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Let's get started. Our movie begins at the house of a young girl named Jean, who possesses extraordinary powers. Professor Charles from the Mutants organization arrives and tells her that she's not the only one who's different in the world. Suddenly, Jean uses her powers to lift the cars outside. Professor Charles and his friend Eric are amazed, and since Jean is the only one with such unique powers, they suggest she joins their organization. We then move to a scene where a child is in the bathroom, and his father notices he's been there for a while. When the father checks on him, he finds the boy crying because of the wings on his back. The father reassures him and promises to help. We then transition to a scene showing most of the mutant students simulating a training session to fight a robot. Logan, a mutant, appears lighting a cigarette and seeming uninterested in the training. When the trainer, Storm, warns him, he asks his friend to throw him so he can kill the robot. Indeed, he manages to cut off its head, acting on his own. In the organization's corridor, Storm confronts Logan about his actions during the training, telling him they were supposed to work together as a team to defeat the robot. Logan nonchalantly responds, "Leave me alone." We then shift to Scott, who is sitting upset about his beloved's death, reminiscing about the moment she died. Scott wears special glasses because he cannot control the laser beams that shoot from his eyes. When he steps outside, he meets Logan, who asks why he skipped training. Scott replies he was busy, but Logan understands he's still affected by Jean's death. We then move to the mutant minister, who has a strange appearance. His secretary enters to remind him of a meeting. During the meeting, they discuss capturing a hidden mutant fugitive from Magneto's organization. They've already captured Raven, one of Magneto's allies. When they try to interrogate her about Magneto's whereabouts, she transforms her body into other people's forms and suddenly attacks everyone in the room. During the meeting, the president presents the minister with a file containing information about a person whose genes can cure mutants and turn them into normal humans. The president suggests offering the serum to all mutants. We then move to Professor Charles, who is teaching his mutant students when the sky suddenly darkens. He tells them the lesson is over. When he steps outside, he finds Storm as the cause and restores the weather to normal. Storm expresses her frustration that mutants are not standing up for themselves. Professor Charles tells her he's considering making her his successor after he dies. Storm suggests Jean should take the role, but Charles explains Jean has been going through a difficult phase lately and believes Storm is more suitable. The mutant minister, Henry, arrives and informs them that a company has discovered a cure for mutants. He explains the serum comes from the genes of a child who can turn mutants back into humans. The company holds a conference announcing the drug, claiming mutants are essentially humans, but have been affected by a severe genetic disease. Mutants worldwide hear about the conference. Storm, who disagrees with the idea, believes mutants are created for a purpose and questions who would take the serum. Suddenly, Rogue, a mutant, enters and says, "I would." Rogue's motivation for taking the serum is her desire to touch her boyfriend, as her powers prevent her from doing so. This causes a divide among mutants. Some want to take the cure and become human, while others want to remain as they are and prevent anyone from taking the serum, fearing humans might betray them, capture them, and force the serum on them. A faction forms under Eric, Professor Charles's rival, aiming to dominate the world. Eric gathers a group of mutants and locates the captive Raven. Meanwhile, Henry visits the company that discovered the cure and meets the child whose genes can cure mutants. When Henry shakes the child's hand, he realizes the child can indeed cure him, as his hand turns human again. We then return to Scott, who has arrived at the site where his beloved Jean died. Voices begin to overwhelm his mind, and he hears Jean calling him. Suddenly, a laser beam shoots from his eyes, creating a vortex in the sea. From the vortex, Jean emerges alive, her powers having protected her. She controls Scott's powers, making him remove his glasses. Professor Charles learns of Jean's survival through his abilities and sends Logan and Storm to find Scott. When they reach the lake, they only find Scott's glasses in Jean's unconscious body. They take her back, and Charles explains that Jean's powers created a protective barrier, which is why she survived. He continues to explain that Jean possesses extraordinary powers capable of controlling the entire world but cannot control them herself. He reveals that when she was a child, he tried to help her control her powers and succeeded in suppressing the monster within her. Now he must try to suppress it again. Logan, who has feelings for Jean, disagrees with Charles's approach and asks him not to control her, as she wouldn't like it. Logan then leaves. At the company producing the serum, a large crowd of mutants gathers outside, wanting to become human again. Inside, the scientist who discovered the cure, the father of the boy seen earlier cutting off his wings, prepares to administer the serum. However, the boy refuses and escapes, emphasizing the idea that everyone should have the freedom to choose their fate, even mutants. Eric successfully locates a convoy and uses his powers to destroy the cars. Inside, Raven manages to kill the police and free herself. Eric enters and frees the remaining mutants in the convoy. Raven tells Eric the location of the child carrying the serum. A police officer attempts to inject Eric with the serum, but Raven intervenes and takes the hit. Eric abandons her, realizing she's no longer useful to him. We then return to Jean, who regains consciousness. When Logan asks her about Scott and shows her his glasses, she remembers what happened and reveals she destroyed him. She asks him to kill her before she harms anyone else. Logan refuses, but she pushes him, causing him to fall, and approaches the location. He goes to Eric, who knows about Jean's situation, and asks one of the mutants to speak on her behalf. In front of Jean's house, Professor Charles and Eric meet. Eric asks him not to interfere, but they both enter to confront Jean. Professor Charles asks her to come back with him and promises to help her control her powers and prevent her from causing harm. However, Eric tells her he wants to give her the serum to control her. Jean becomes angry and destroys the place. Logan and Storm decide to intervene to help the professor, but Eric's allies stop them. When the professor tries to control Jean's mind using his powers, she resists. Jean unleashes her full strength, disintegrating the professor into particles. Eric tries to stop her, but she freezes time. The professor looks one last time at Logan before dying. Eric then asks Jean, after she regains her composure, to come with him. When Logan arrives, he finds the wheelchair empty and the professor dead. The students isolate themselves in grief and sadness. At night, one of the mutants gathers her belongings and sees her lover with another girl. Because her ice powers prevent her from touching him, she decides to take the serum and return to being human. When Logan finds out, he lets her make her own decision. The next day, Logan and his friends gather, mourning the professor's death. Storm decides to take his place and organize matters. Meanwhile, a protest by mutants refusing to take the serum takes place outside the company producing the cure. Suddenly, the protest turns into an attack, and one of the mutants sets the police station on fire. Eric appears on television, delivering a speech threatening the company to hand over the child carrying the cure's genes so they can kill him. The military begins preparing for battle. In the forest, Logan tries to escape Eric's men and defend himself. He decides to meet John and convince her to return with him. When John senses him and sees him, she steps away from the rebellion. Logan calls out to her, but Eric appears and prevents him from approaching, claiming that Jean is there of her own free will. Logan returns to the organization and forms a team to face Eric. Despite their small numbers, they decide to sacrifice themselves to protect the world. Eric and his followers arrive at their destination and begin their attack, dismantling the metal bridge and connecting it to the island where the child is held. The military attacks, but Eric stops their weapons, which are made of plastic. The army manages to throw the serum at the mutants, but Eric blocks them. He orders one of the mutants to use sound waves to destroy the soldiers' weapons. Logan, Storm, and the rest of the team arrive to confront Eric and his allies. The mutants attempt to reach the child carrying the cure. One mutant succeeds but cannot use her powers on him. A rocky mutant tries to destroy them but crashes into a wall. We switch to the mutants, who are about to kill the inventor of the cure. They knock him down, but his son arrives just in time and saves him. Storm manages to strike the girl with her power, and Eric and one of the mutants use their powers to hurl cars, trapping them. Another mutant emerges and uses his icy powers to block the fire. Jean stands watching silently. The Iceman manages to defeat the fireman. Eric captures Logan, but Henry appears from behind and injects Eric with the serum, causing him to lose his powers. Eric asks Jean to use her powers, but she seems calm and on the verge of joining them. Suddenly, soldiers fire at her, turning her into a demon-like state. She uses her powers to destroy the soldiers, losing control and nearly destroying the entire world. Eric looks at her in shock and flees. Logan asks Storm to leave the area, saying he has a plan. He approaches Jean, who is destroying everything around her. She asks Logan if he is willing to die for them. Logan responds that he would die for her. Jean regains her consciousness briefly, and Logan stabs her, stopping her powers. Logan cries because he loved her. Jean is buried next to her lover, Scott, and the professor. The mutant Rog, who took the serum, returns to her lover and is able to touch him. The organization reopens, and the president announces that humans and mutants are equal, and taking the serum is a personal choice. Logan is shown reflecting on the events. In the final scene, Eric is seen moving a chess piece with his powers, and here the movie ends. If you liked the video, subscribe to the channel and activate the notification button so you never miss an updates. See you in the next video.